Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sin and this is Fatale Bella, a podcast where I talk about female directors and women in the film industry. Today we're going to be talking about Karyn Kusama. So Karyn Kusama is an American film and television director. She made her feature directorial and writing debut with the sports drama film Girl Fright, for which she won Best Director at Sundance Film Festival and earned a nomination for the Independent Spirit Award for Best First Feature. For it being her first feature, that is impressive. I mean, go Karyn. In my research, it appears that she mostly produces and directs horror and sci-fi film and TV shows, which I think is really cool because I know the rise in popularity with Greta Gerwig as a more commercial director. People kind of have this misconception that women-directed films tend to be more sappy and heartfelt and emotional. And not that men can't produce those films as well, because most directors are men and rom-coms exist. But there's this interview that she did where she mostly talked about how it's for the working class. Horror is for the working class. I really think about it at the end of the day. Films are kind of made for escapism, and the working class uses films to escape, and they also relate to them because at its core it is them, because horror and sci-fi at its core is basically taking the elements and situations that could possibly kill you or scare the living shit out of you, and you get to kind of experience those emotions without actually being put in that kind of danger. So you can kind of live vicariously through these experiences. That's why people are attracted to horror movies or true crime documentaries and podcasts and stuff like that, which I think is really fascinating. I want to take it one step further and say that it satisfies a sick part of our confirmation bias, because we know that life is fragile and the world is dangerous, and it confirms to us without us having to actually have a dangerous experience. That's what I always say about driving. I'm convinced that driving is so dangerous, and I don't know how people aren't in more car accidents. But I personally would not want to be in a car accident to confirm this bias I have about how dangerous driving is. So when I see stuff pop up on my For You page of accidents and stuff, I'm just oh, I knew it. I knew driving was dangerous. So kind of when we get to see things happening that we kind of internally feel, it reassures us in a way that we're not crazy. These things could possibly happen. Or maybe we are a little crazy because these things would never happen. But it's nice to have an outlet to experience those emotions through, which is another element of filmmaking that really drew Karyn to be a director. Sorry, Karyn. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing her name right because she deserves that. She deserves that level of respect. In another interview, I think it was an interview with AFI, she talks about how she used filmmaking as a way to express herself, like most filmmakers. And kind of continuing to talk about that specific AFI interview, someone asked her about her first project, Girl Fright, basically what challenges she faced to make it and how long it ultimately took her to make. And she answered it took her about 7 years. And the hardship that she faced with it was basically everything that takes to make a film, from writing a script to getting a crew assembled to finding the schedule for everyone to then shooting on locations. And then when you're on location, you're shooting in all of the obstacles that kind of just get thrown at you left and right that you didn't plan for or predict could happen. Filmmaking is such a tedious and strenuous process. Something my production professors always loved to say was at their core, movies don't want to get made. Because every problem you think could be everything that you think could be a problem is a problem when you're trying to achieve a film. And so considering that it took her 7 years to get Girl Fight from an idea to a complete film, the follow-up question to that was what did she do in the meantime? What was she actively doing to prepare to then ultimately complete this film? She basically said everything she could to still create. I love that response. Everything she could to still create. Obviously, she's realistic, which is something I feel maybe some more commercially successful directors, when they give advice, aren't really realistic. Their advice is great and it's very inspirational, but it's not really practical. And I feel like that response was just so sincere and realistic. Like, anything I could. She says that she was still painting houses and babysitting and doing all these odd end jobs, but she would give herself a few hours every single week to write. That's all she needed to be a successful director. Just 2 hours a week dedicated to writing. Like, that blows my mind. And it shouldn't, because obviously everything that you do consistently and like show up for, success compounds like interest, you know? So the fact that all she could manage in her busy schedule, in her rat race of a life, trying to just keep a roof over her head, was just 2 hours a week. And it took her 7 years to make a girl fight that then put her on the map. You go, Karyn. I love that. That is amazing and inspirational. And it's inspirational in a way that's like obtainable, you know? But the fact that that's all Karyn could manage and she still was successful and patient. Imagine doing that every single week for 7 years because you truly believe in your vision and you know your story is great and it deserves to be told. That is the essence of storytelling and directing. I mean, there's just no other way around it. So Girl Fight is the movie that put her on the map. But the one movie I want to talk about that she directed is Jennifer's Body. I'm going to try to comment on it and not get blocked. And I feel like I did that really well with when I was reviewing Julie Dash's Daughters of the Dust. So the YouTube gods aren't mad at me, but I am not pushing my luck. Jennifer's Body came out in 2009, and I was 10 in 2009, so that's why I didn't watch it until the beginning of this year, truly. And I also wasn't into horror. I know it was like a horror comedy kind of thing, but anything with horror, like as a kid, I was like, mm-mm. In doing my research, I found out that it didn't matter if I watched it when I was 10 because at the time it wasn't well received. And there's many factors as to why that was. One of the reasons was the people working on the film. Diablo Cody was fresh off of the success of Juno, and people perceived her to be a one-hit wonder and that she wouldn't be able to follow up her success with Jennifer's Body as a writer. And the other was that Megan Fox. I was going to say Megan Thee Stallion. I was like, I don't think Megan Thee Stallion was in this movie. But Megan Fox was just fresh off Transformer, and people still had it like etched in her mind that I can't talk tonight. People still had it etched in their mind that she was just like this sexy girl from Transformers, and that's like all she could be. So like, how could this film really be good if it's just a woman writing it, a woman being in it? It's probably going to be like some feminist stuff. And it was. And so people were kind of banking on it to fail even before it was released, which I think is wild. I'm going to link this Spice article below, but I read in the Spice article, some people perceived Jennifer's Body to be the Twilight for boys because Twilight itself is like a vampire. So it's like a monster that's in love with a human, and they have this like bestiality love. I don't know. It's a vampire, not a werewolf. Okay. But there are werewolves in Twilight. There are werewolves in Twilight. Anyway, I'm not getting into that. But they thought like, oh, because Bella's a girl and Edward's a boy, the roles are flip-flopped. Now boys get to have their Twilight. And so Jennifer is the monster, and then like maybe one of the guys is going to be like the Bella of Jennifer's Body. But that obviously didn't happen because it is not the Twilight for boys. Because she was eating her victims, there was no real establishing relationships with any of these men. So none of the audience members could put themselves in that role to then fantasize in being like Jennifer's love interest. Because she's not interested in loving any of them. She's interested in feeding off of them to keep her youth. So obviously it was a letdown when people found out it wasn't going to be this sex fantasy with Megan Fox being the sexy fantasy that they could, immerse themselves into. Don't get me wrong, it was a little creepy, a little disturbing. You had to really be like invested, and it's more of a story. It's not just Megan Fox being hot and like making out with Amanda. And so that was one of like the disconnects. It was marketed as a sex fantasy, and when it wasn't delivered as a sex fantasy with Megan Fox, I keep wanting to say Meg Thee Stallion. Obviously to the male audience that it was marketed to, it was a letdown. And also, I think what really fed into this misinformation that it was going to be a sex fantasy was the fact that the publicity team really heavily pushed the scene where Megan's character and Amanda's character kiss. And don't get me wrong, they do kiss. That is something that happens in the film. But it is not like a sexy, like lesbian kiss, like girl on girl action that men somehow find attractive. It's more of like watching middle schoolers kiss. It's like awkward and kind of gross, and you're just like, oh, they shouldn't be doing that. Like they're not enjoying what's going on here. So that's kind of what that scene was. And then Amanda kicks her out, and Jennifer does the funniest thing. She just like jumps out a window. It's hilarious. So again, also the kiss was a letdown. Like Megan Fox isn't being sexy for us, and they're not enjoying the kiss. I don't like this movie, which is probably a lot of guys said. And you have to also understand this was before the Me Too movement. So after the Me Too movement, people kind of revisited Jennifer's body. It somehow, I couldn't really pinpoint when it picked up like interest again. People started watching it again and re-evaluating and reviewing it again. And it got a lot more positive reviews now. So yeah, after the Me Too movement, it finally got the flowers it deserves, and people really started noticing that it wasn't the sex fantasy that it was marketed to be, but it's actually a rape revenge fantasy. Because Jennifer, although she isn't raped, she is taken advantage of by this band that she goes to see that she like admires, and they basically sacrifice her to the devil for fame. And they do achieve fame because she was sacrificed to the devil. She's getting her revenge. And obviously it's not on the band itself. That's not usually how trauma works. You don't really, hurt the people that hurt you. You accidentally hurt others. Hence her hurting her classmates. It's all a big metaphor, which I think went straight over guys' heads when they were really trying to find a nice scene where she was naked. There's only one, and she's not really that naked. And it's such beautiful storytelling, and I feel like people overlooked that when they were trying to find sex appeal in it. It has beautiful visuals, it had compelling characters, and Karyn and Cody are master storytellers. There's 3 scenes that I particularly love. There's one scene where there's like this epic zoom, and I'll put it on the screen. There's like this epic zoom with this epic music. It's just chef's kiss. And then there's this lake swimming scene. I've noticed, just from watching Jennifer's body, because I haven't seen her other work, Karyn likes to use wide establishing landscape shots. She does this in this lake scene. She does this when one of Jennifer's victims arrives to this empty housing lot. And I love that. I love being able to like get like it's not so aerial. It's like at a distance, but you get a sense of the space, not just the location, the space, the world that we're being invited to participate in. So I think that is amazing. And then also there's this epic slow-mo, that pacing of the film, the way that she uses slow-mo and the way that she kind of uses the zooming and the panning and the tilting, like it all works so wonderfully. And to do comedy, it's such a hard feat. It's not easy. You have to be super intelligent and like mathematical. She does it so well. It's horror. It's scary to watch her eat these men and tear them limb from limb. Like it's gruesome. But there's also parts of it that are like funny. And to have that combination work so well, I mean, come on. Give Miss Karyn a round of applause, because Miss Girl did her thing. And I'm very disappointed in the audience of 2009 who couldn't see or respect just how hardworking this woman is and how great of a story this was and how perfectly executed it was. And I also feel like Karyn is one of those directors that prove men wrong, because again, like I said in the beginning, a lot of people have this misconception that like female directors are only going to make like sappy stuff or like feminist things or like man-hating content. And it's like, no, we are humans too, and there are some girls that like aren't really feminine and they love to explore the other side of film that isn't just like super like fashion focused or like emotional. Karyn brings out and does an amazing job in horror and sci-fi. She instills fear with visuals and music, and just like any other man would. And I feel like if she were to get into epics or like action movies, she would blow it out of the water. Trust me, she would, if that was her interest. But yeah, and also with like the Barbie movie, like, yeah, it was feminine, but it shows you that like it's even feminine work can be well received, and you don't have to play like a man to win in a man's game. Like, these are two women that kind of operate on different spectrums of the art, you know, with one being a little more like horror based and one being a little more emotional and, you know, feminine, and exploring what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a daughter, a mother. There's space for all of us. So yeah, that's all I just wanted to say about that. It's just another episode or video of me on YouTube fangirling over a female director, because they are awesome and they deserve more recognition. If you want to hear me talk more about female directors, I make videos every Friday, so please like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you then. Bye.